So happy New Year. I was at White Sands all afternoon and into the evening last night, celebrating the Lunar New Year. They do that in Vietnam also, and by the they call this the Year of the Mouse. So in Chinese, there's sort of one word that refers to small furry rodents. So rat, mouse, gerbil, whatever works for you, that's the year. So I've been spending a lot of time at White Sands since I saw you last. We had a sesshin there, the first time we've done that. So a sesshin is a Zen retreat, and you spend a lot of time meditating, about 7.5 hours a day. And not all at once. It's kind of broken up. And you also live mindfully, so there's a period of work, and it's all done in noble silence. The period while you're washing dishes, you're doing that quietly, sweeping the floor, whatever. So it gives you a lot of time and opportunity to become intimately acquainted with the workings of your mind. And it also really kind of helps you start to see, because you're practicing it all the time, what's going on right here, right now. And so this was started on Wednesday night and ended on a Sunday morning. And on Friday morning, I was walking from where I was sleeping to the temple. And I happened to look up and notice the moon. It was essentially a full moon, and it was setting. It was not quite 6:30 in the morning, and so the moon was going down in the west. This big golden moon. And so there's a pond in front of White Sands, in front of the meditation hall, with some statues around it, big statues. And so I moved down by the pond to get a better view of the moon. And as I got down there, it was slightly above Bodhisattva Kuan Am's right shoulder. Somebody else took that, but it was probably the same day, and they got where the moon was behind Kuan Am instead of over the shoulder. I liked seeing the moon over her shoulder. Anyway, it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. And Quincy was ringing the bell. Can anybody hear that? There's a big bell like this tall. Yeah, that's it. And so I was looking at the moon and hearing that. Kuan Am's face was in silhouette behind the moon, and framed by the trees behind. It was so profound that I was almost late to the temple. I was so caught up in this feeling of awe. It was just one of those perfect moments. And so my heart was just filled with this joyful appreciation of beauty. So awe, that's a connection to something greater than yourself. It's not an abstraction. This is an actual feeling of profound awareness. It can be measured. There's a simulation lab at the University of Central Florida where they study awe. And what inspired them to do this was that astronauts would return from the space station or from the moon or whatever, and they would say that they had seen God as they looked down on Earth from outer space. And so there's researchers who study that basically by putting people in a simulation where they see the sun rising over the Earth from outer space. During the retreat, the teacher, Genjo Gallagher, who's the teacher at Brevard Zen Center, was talking about why he meditated and why he got interested in Zen Buddhism. And he said that he had come to Zen hoping to deaden his feelings. He wanted to learn how not to feel. And what he got was just the opposite of that. He learned to feel even more intensely, but in a different way. And he said, what Zen did for me was it gave me my awe back. Awe is an authentic feeling. It's a genuine feeling, as opposed to kind of a self-oriented feeling. So later during the retreat, I was meditating. And the first several sittings while I was there was kind of stressful. There was a lot of stuff. I was kind of the point person on how the retreat would run. Jim took care of all the teaching, so I could actually sit and meditate, which was a nice thing. I wasn't unhappy about that at all. But I was dealing with, the volunteers at White Sands and stuff and making sure everything was working okay. So the first few sittings were kind of stressful. And then all of that settled down, and suddenly I had this sense of gladness that arose in my heart. So this wasn't the blissful jhana. If you've studied meditation, there's levels of sort of refined mental states that will arise, and one of them is a state of deep bliss, and this wasn't that. There was nothing particularly spiritual about it. Wasn't mystical or anything like that. I was just plain glad that we had done what we needed to do so that we could all sit together that way and meditate. So later, it got me thinking about the nature of feelings. Why are some feelings so much more immediate and so much more authentic, for lack of a better word, than others? What's the difference between the emotions of liberation and the emotions of stress and affliction? So there's a sign somewhere on the grounds at White Sands. I forgot to look and see where it was, but I've seen it many times before. It's something that the abbot once said, and it's in his calligraphy. And it says, "Your true life of happiness does not need a self to exist." So when I saw that the first time, it made me stop and think about it, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I thought, imagine having a self. How would that work? What does this mean? Is it a koan? What does it mean? How can you experience happiness without a self to perceive it and evaluate and judge it as happiness? So let me tweak what Kai-Tien says a little bit and change it just a little. True happiness needs no self to exist. And that's probably not any better. But the Buddha's first teaching, one of his early teachings, was on this concept of anatta, which is the teaching that form is not self, feeling is not self, sensation, perception, consciousness, not self. So we chant about these things at White Sands every Sunday, and a lot of other Buddhists all over the world chant about this. But usually without thinking too much about what it means. And so it sounds like some sort of mumbo-jumbo abstraction. But let me explain it in terms of how to miss seeing the moon. So imagine if I had seen the moon, and I thought, oh, the moon is so pretty. I need to get a picture of that and put it up on Facebook and Instagram. So I run back to my room, I get my phone with my camera, and I run down there and I try to get it just right. Oh, it doesn't look as good as it does in reality, but it's pretty good in the picture anyway. I'll get it, I can post it up, and everybody will know how cool I am for going to a Zen retreat. And so I put it up, and then I come back to it and I look at it and I go, how many likes do I have? Oh, why aren't more people liking it? I thought it would go viral by now. Why isn't it viral yet? What's wrong with these people? What's wrong with me that I can't put a picture of the moon up and everybody like me and it go viral, right? So I could take the moon and I could make it all about me and how I failed to somehow make me look good with the moon. And so then what happens to the awe, right? So your true life of happiness, leave yourself out of it. Just look at the doggone moon, right? So this is how we make feelings more authentic, more liberating, less keeping you caught up in the cycle of stress. They're not about me. When you meditate, especially over the course of a retreat, you're really sitting and practicing letting go of what comes up. And to do that, you get in the habit of taking yourself out of the responses. A sensation arises. I don't have to tell a story about what that means to me. A sound happens. I just hear the sound. I hear the bird sing or whatever, or a stomach growl. And it's just a sound. I don't have to think about what it means to me. As a result of this, perceptions become more immediate. You see more directly. Your senses actually seem heightened because when you take the eye out of your perceptions, you're seeing more directly. You bypass a bunch of layers of stuff. Authentic feelings like this are not always pleasant. They're direct and genuine, but not necessarily what we would consider positive feelings. So as I was meditating, someone came to mind, and this was someone who was for a long time a very big part of my life. I'm not going to say who because I haven't talked to them. I don't want to talk about them without their permission, but we were very, very close for a long time, and we still stay in touch some. And this person has cancer, and they've been suffering for more than a year. A lot of pain, physical pain, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And this came up during meditation, along with sorrow and sadness. Sadness is okay. We can't have joy without sadness, right? So, and sometimes people have a hard time understanding that not all unpleasant feelings are bad feelings or feelings that we should get rid of. A person who came to the monastery one weekend, and they wanted to talk to me after services, so we sat. I had them sit with me at lunch, and we started talking, and they were losing their best friend to drugs and drug addiction. And so, they wanted to talk to me about that, and as we talked, I realized that they had kind of gotten to understanding that there wasn't a whole lot they could do to keep their friend from falling prey to this addiction. But they wanted to feel okay about it. It was hurting. It was hurting to see their friend destroy themselves. And so, and they didn't want to feel that hurt. And so I said, would you really want to feel okay about that? That would be weird. You're losing a friend. Of course it hurts. Otherwise, if it didn't hurt to lose a friend, it wouldn't feel good to have a friend. So there's no need for an it's all good mentality. Sometimes it's really unpleasant, and that's okay. The important thing is that your feelings be true and authentic, and that they not be about what you want and what you don't want, but that they just be a response to what's going on. But what about feelings like greed, hatred, feelings that arise out of delusion, like life shouldn't be so unfair, or people should agree with me all the time? So those feelings, what's different there is that those feelings are about me. Greed, I need more. Anger, you should do what I want, and you're bad because I say so. I can't be happy unless I get what I want. So if you replace yourself with no self, then what happens? Most of those feelings go away, and they lose their validity. If you take yourself out, what you get left with just gets very real. And by this I mean it's direct. It's not filtered through a bunch of judgments. This doesn't mean that we should reject feelings when they arise. Feelings are not self. By this I mean we can't decide what feelings will arise and what feelings won't. So Genjo Sensei, who was the teacher, his teacher was a person that I've mentioned here before, probably Soen Roshi. And he famously said something that I've probably quoted before because it's very appropriate. He referred to thoughts as secretions of the mind. They just arise. You don't have to do anything to get them any more than you have to do something to make your nose run. These things arise in response to stimulus, and you can't wish them not to happen. And it's the same with feelings, perceptions, consciousness, and so on. In that sense, they're not ours. We can't make them be a certain way. But even though there's nothing we can do to prevent their arising, they arise out of habit, out of hardwiring, and so on, we can choose whether to add to them, whether to make them mine by judging life instead of living life. There's no need to add a bunch of storyline. But if you live more authentically, you'll feel more authentically. In other words, to feel authentically, you see with your eye. not with your eye. With the EYE, not the EGO. So it's not my moon, it's not mine to like or judge, it's just the moon. So instead of a story or a judgment, what do you end up with? Well, one of my teachers, Koyoka Bose, has a really good word for this thing that arises when you're seeing directly. Now, he's second generation Japanese. He was a child in the internment camps during World War II. He doesn't speak much Japanese, but he still has that kind of Japanese cultural way of speaking. So this word, I wish I could say it like he does. It's a little bit like this. Wow. Look at the moon. Wow. My friend is suffering. Wow. We're here together practicing. Wow. Now, this doesn't always have to be some sort of spiritual thing. Authentic feelings can arise in response to all kinds of stuff. It can just be the appreciation of something good. I have a good friend that I saw at the Y on Friday, and we were leaving, and he goes, "Hey, come out back to the parking lot. Let me show you my new car." So his wife had gotten him a Tesla for Christmas. And so he wanted me to see that. So I tell you, it was a very nice car. And he said, "Let's go for a ride." Absolutely. So I got in the car. And so the Y in DeLand is adjacent to this airport property. And so there's a road that runs back behind the Y, back into the airport, and there's no traffic there. And so we pull out there, and he goes, "This is the fastest car on the road," and he punched it. And I sunk into my seat. And guess what I said? Wow. Absolutely. So wow is just an authentic response to what's really happening and how we feel about it, what arises in response to it. So I want you to do something for me. I want you to look at your neighbor. And I want you to look into his or her eyes. And I want you to make a connection. And I want you to experience that you are a part of a spiritual community together. Like Merton said, you're not two, you're one. And then I want you to look back at me and tell me what you feel. Wow. All right. Wow. All right, I'm going to give you a couple of moments just of silent reflection to let that sink in.